Today, we're going to talk a little bit about forgiveness. And this is something that I have personally dealt a lot with, especially since moving to the Philippines. In different cultures, that there is a different emphasis on many different issues. And the emphasis in the Philippines on forgiveness, I think, is really skewed, or it is really not correct or appropriate. Because here, and it's not just here, but here it's very prevalent that forgiveness is thought of as pretending something never happened. Never speaking of it, never dealing with it, just acting and pretending like the event never happened. They consider this to be forgiveness. And so, let's look at forgiveness in the Bible. We have two different ways to go here. Jesus says to love your enemies. Loving your enemies would also imply to forgive them. So that's where people get this idea of forgiving without dealing with the situation. Because if you forgive your enemy never asks for forgiveness. They are, by definition, your enemy. So they don't ask for forgiveness, they don't seek forgiveness, they don't seek to make things right. They are your enemy and you forgive them. But there's a difference here, because we also are instructed to forgive our brothers and sisters. And this is not just for our earthly family, but for our spiritual family. And we are given a different standard when forgiving our brothers and sisters who sin against us. And we find the example of this forgiveness in Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Jesus says, "If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over." Then the next step in this process, he goes on to say, "But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses." So if you cannot resolve the issue between you and the person who has sinned against you, you are to go back to them with witnesses of this action, of this event. And then there's a third step. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the gathering of the believers. And if they refuse to listen even to the assembly, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Okay, so when it comes to our family, our spiritual family, we are not to pretend that an event didn't happen. We are not to pretend that a sin never took place. We are not to bury our heads and just go on smiling and pretending like everything is okay. We are to go to that person who sinned, tell them, and give them an opportunity to seek forgiveness, to change their mind about that situation. And if they don't, you take more people, and if they still don't, you take more people. And you do that until either they accept that they sinned and seek forgiveness, Or if they never do accept it, then you distance yourself from them. You treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector, meaning you don't hang out with a pagan. You don't hang out with the bad people. You're supposed to surround yourself with good people. Not that we should treat bad people, pagans or tax collectors, badly. They need the Lord too. But they are not the people that we should surround ourselves with on a daily basis. So here, that's our model. And it's right there in the scripture, but for some reason, many people don't seem to understand that. And again, this idea of distancing yourself from somebody who doesn't acknowledge that they've hurt you, that they've sinned against you. You know, you can find another example of this in Matthew chapter 10:14. Jesus says, "If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet." So he doesn't say to continue staying there, continue being around those people and talking to those people and letting those people hurt you. Because that's what often happens. You know, if somebody sins against us and we don't address it, we don't act on it and follow these steps that Jesus gave us, then that person who sinned against us never really understands their sin. And so they will keep doing that. So if we bury our heads, if we pretend like it never happened, it is bound to happen again and again and again. And you see that here in many churches. You see people just hurt over and over and over again by the same people because they never address it. They never go to these people and tell them what they've done and try to resolve it. So, if you do go to the person and you try to resolve it and the person refuses to acknowledge it and to ask for forgiveness, then you distance yourself from them. You do not just continue to be a doormat for them to wipe their feet on. He says, leave. Dust off your feet and go to the next place, the next person. And the previous verse, he said, treat them as a pagan. And as I pointed out, that's not in hate or bitterness, but in not being close. If there is a pagan or a tax collector, you share, you are nice, you are Christian, but you do not just hang out with these people until and unless they have changed their minds and become believers. So, that's the scripture on forgiveness for our brothers and sisters. It's something to think about, and I hope that it would encourage people to deal with these situations instead of pretending like they never happened.